Hi, this is Anil from Learning Led Education and welcome to another tutorial on Java programming language. So in this tutorial, we're going to learn some more things about the methods in Java. So we're going to learn about the method nesting, which is nothing but calling a method in another method in a class. And then we're going to learn about the method overloading, which is nothing but having several methods with the same name and different signatures in the class. So first we're gonna learn about the method nesting. So just for the demonstration purpose, here I have created a project, and inside my source folder I have a package called oops, and in that package I have two classes. One is the test class and another one is the tutorial class. I have this main method in my tutorial class, and my test class is empty now. So all of you know that we can have the properties and the methods in our class. So here, just for the demonstration purpose, I'm gonna create a method, and let's say my method is gonna return an integer value, and let me call my method as max, and it's gonna take a couple of parameters. Let's say it's gonna take int num1, and it's gonna take another parameter of type integers, and let me call it as num2. Now this max method is gonna take two parameters, and it's gonna return the maximum value between the two parameters it receives. So here we're gonna use the if condition to check that one. So if num1 is greater than num2, then we're gonna return num1, else we're gonna return num2. Alright, now this max method is gonna return the maximum value between the two parameters passed to it. Now we're gonna learn about the method nesting. So here inside this test class I have this max method. All of you know that I can call this max method from an object which I'm gonna be creating from this test class. So if I want, I can create an object of this test class. For example, test t equal to new test, and now I can call the max method from this t object. So it's gonna be t dot, and it's gonna be max, and I need to pass two values, let's say 22 and 44, and this max method is gonna return some value. So we're gonna store that in our result variable, an integer variable that I'm gonna create here. And then we're just gonna use a println statement, and we can print it out. So it's gonna be system.out.println, and we're gonna print out the value in the result variable. So it's got to be system. And now if I run this program, you guys can see the max method is gonna return the maximum value from the parameters that we're gonna pass to it. Now the method nesting is nothing but we can call this max method within another method which we're gonna be creating inside this test class. So here, let's say we're gonna have another method. Let me create the method and let me call it as void, and let's say display. And this display method, it may take parameters or may not take parameters. Here in this case we're gonna assume that it's not gonna take any parameters. And here from this display method I can call this max method. So I can call this max method here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this code from this tutorial class, or I'm gonna cut this code and I'm gonna paste it here, and we're gonna call the max method directly. So here this max method is defined inside this test class. So I can call this max method inside this class just by writing the name of it. So here you guys can see I have returned the method name, which is max, and then I have passed a couple of arguments. I can call this display method from the object that I'm gonna create from this test class. So here we have this t object which is created from this test class, and if I call the display method, then this display method is gonna call this max method by itself. So if I run this program, Then you guys can see we get the 44, which is the maximum value between this 22 and 44. So this is about the method nesting, and another thing that I want you guys to teach you is about the method overloading. So this method overloading is nothing but in a class we can have more than one methods with the same name but with different signatures. So what I mean by that is, here in this test class I can have another method with the name max, but the signature of that methods should differ, which is nothing but if I create another method should contain different number of parameters, or the type of the parameters that the method takes should differ. So here, for example, our max method is gonna take integer parameters. So we can use this max method only for the integer types of data. What if we want to find out the maximum value between double type of data? So at that time, we can use the method with the same name but with different signature. So here our method is gonna return the double value, and then we're gonna write the method name, which is gonna be max, and then it's gonna take two parameters, double num1 and double num2, and then the logic of this max method is gonna be same. So I'm gonna copy this code and I'm gonna paste it here. And now you guys can see in this test class I have two methods with the same name, but you guys can see here the signature of these two methods differs. Here the first method is gonna take two parameters of integer type, and the second max method is gonna take two parameters of double type. So now I'm gonna save this code, and then I can call the max method and pass the double parameters also. So here we are passing the integer types of data to this max method. So now all of you know that if you want, we can call this max method within the method which will be defined inside this test class, or we can call that method from an object here from this tutorial class. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove this code, and then here in this tutorial class I'm gonna remove this line of code, and we're gonna call this max method from an object of the test class. So here we have this t object. Now I can call the max method and t dot max, and now I can pass two parameters. I can pass either integer types of data or I can pass double type of data, because we have defined two methods which are gonna take different types of data. So what I'm gonna do is, here I'm gonna call this method inside my println statement. So I'm just gonna use the system.out.println method, and then we're gonna say the maximum is, and then we're gonna append, and then we're gonna call this method right here. Alright, now to this max method we need to pass two parameters. Either we can pass integer types of data or double types of data. So here let me pass first integer types of data, so 33 and 66. Now if I run this program, you guys can see the maximum is 66. Here what happened is the Java automatically figures out which method to call. Depending on the types of parameters that we have passed, Java is gonna call this max method which we have defined for taking integer types of data. So if you want, you can check that out just by using a println statement. So I'm just gonna use println statement here, and I'm gonna say for integer data, and then I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna paste it here in this second max method, and I'm gonna say for double type of data. So now If I run this program, you guys can see for integer data, the maximum is 66. So what happened here is Java automatically figures out which method it has to call. By looking at the type of data we have passed, Java automatically calls this method which we have defined for this integer types of data. Now, if I pass a double type of data here, for example 33.2 and then 66.8, then I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna run this. You guys can see for double data the maximum is 66.8. So here, by looking at the type of argument passed, the Java automatically figures out which method it has to call. Here it figures out that it has to call this max method, which is gonna take double types of data as a parameter. So this is called method overloading. So here we have two methods with the same name, but the signature of this method is differing. So one important thing to notice is here I told you guys that the signature of the method should differ. So here the types of parameters taken by the method should differ, or the number of parameters taken by the methods should differ, or both can happen. But only the change in the return type is not gonna valid. What I mean by that is here I can't have a method which is gonna take same type of data. For example, I'm just gonna copy this max method which is gonna take integer parameters and I'm gonna paste it here. And then if I change the return type here, for example, let's say void, and let me comment this code, just to demonstrate. Alright, now this is not gonna valid. You guys can see here the error already shows, and it says duplicate method max int type test. So when you do the method overloading, the signature of the method should differ, which is nothing but the method can take variable number of parameters, or the parameters taken by the methods should be of different types. So here I can't have another max method which is gonna take same number of parameters and the parameters are gonna be of same type. So now these two max methods are identical. This is not gonna valid. Here the types of data taken by the method should differ, or the number of parameters taken by the method should differ. So if I want, I can have another method here, and it can take let's say integer num3. Now this is valid because here for this max method and for this max method, the number of parameters taken by this method differs. So the first max method is gonna take 2 parameters and they're gonna be of integer type, and the second max method is gonna take 3 parameters and they are of type integers. So this is valid because they differ in the number of parameters they take. So when you overload the method, the methods you're gonna overload should differ either by the number of parameters they take or by the types of parameters they take. If your method is gonna take same number of parameters and the same type of parameters, and only if their return type differs, then it's not gonna be valid. So here we already have a method which is gonna return the maximum value between 2 values. So we're gonna use that one. So I can call this max method inside this second max method, which is going to take 3 parameters. So for the simplicity, I'm going to create another variable, and here we're going to call the max method and pass 2 values. So we're going to pass num1 and num2. So it's going to be num1 and num2. Now our result variable is going to contain the maximum value between the num1 and num2. The next thing that we need to do is we need to find out the maximum value between the value stored in this result variable, which is nothing but the maximum between this num1 and num2 and the num3 variable. So for that purpose, we're gonna call this max method again, and we're gonna pass 2 parameters which are nothing but result and num3. So we're gonna return the value returned by this max method. So here this code is gonna return the maximum value between three integer numbers. And just to show you guys the difference between the calling of these methods, we're gonna say here for integer data with 3 parameters, and we're gonna say with 2 parameters. Alright, now from this tutorial class, we're gonna call this max method and we're gonna pass 3 parameters. So I'm gonna pass 22, 33 and 55, 3 integer values, and I'm gonna run this program. Now you guys can see for integer data with 3 parameters. So first here when we call this max method, Java figures out which method it has to call. Here from the number of arguments passed, it comes to know that okay, I have to call the max method which is gonna take 3 parameters of integer type. So here this is gonna call this max method with 3 parameters, and that's why we're gonna get, let me drag this back here. Okay, and now here you guys can see we get integer data with 3 parameters. So this method is being called by the Java. Now from this method we are calling the max method with 2 parameters here, and because of that Java automatically figures out which method it has to call. It has this max method which is gonna take 2 parameters here, and this max method which is gonna take 2 parameters, and then it's gonna checks out the type of data passed. Here we are passing integer types of data. Remember, we are passing integer types of data, and that's why it's gonna call this method. So we get integer data with 2 parameters, and then we are calling this max method again with 2 integer values, and because of that again this max method will be called, and that's why we're gonna get integer data with 2 parameters again, and then the maximum value will be returned from this max method and that will be printed out, and that's why we get the maximum is 55. So between these 22, 33 and 55 the maximum value is 55. So similarly, if you want, you can create another method with the name max, which is gonna take 3 parameters of double type, and then you can implement that. So this is about the method overloading, which is nothing but having the methods with the same name but with different signatures. And what I mean by that, by saying different signature, is not by the type of data returned by that methods. The signatures should differ only by the type of data which are taken as the parameters, or by the number of parameters, or both, not by the type of data returned from the method. So now in this tutorial, the last thing that we're gonna learn is about the advantages of this method nesting and the method overloading. So first we're gonna talk about the method nesting. So because of this method nesting, we can use the methods which we have defined in our class whenever we're gonna need it. So because of that, we don't need to write the code again and again. As you guys can see here in this tutorial, we are using the max method with 2 parameters inside the max method with 3 parameters, and because of that, we are reusing the code and we don't need to write the code to do the same thing again and again. It's gonna be the big benefit of this method nesting. And to talk about the method overloading, we can have the methods which are gonna do the same task under one name. As you guys can see here in this tutorial, we have this max method which is gonna do the same thing. It's gonna return the maximum value between the parameters it receives. So we can have the max method for the integer types and for the double types, and for 2 arguments or the 3 arguments with one name. It's gonna do the same thing. So we don't need to remember different method names for doing the same thing. So we can use the same name for the methods that are going to do the same thing. So because of that, our code is going to be very easy to understand and it's going to be very easy to maintain. So this is it, guys. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you guys have any doubt, then don't hesitate to put a comment. If I'm free, then I'm gonna answer that. And also, if you guys think that you guys have learned something from this tutorial, then please like this video and share it with your friends. And also you guys can like my Facebook page at facebook.com/learninglad. Tweet me on Twitter at learninglad.edu, and also you guys can get the source code of this tutorial in my website learninglad.com, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.